Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 623. I'm Tom Cagley, your host, and in the SPaMCAST 623, we'll feature my interview with Christian Dr. Lambda Clausen, author of 5 Lines of Code from Manning Publication. Dr. Lambda delivers advice on why refactoring is a necessity and how to refactor effectively. Clean code is not an option. Refactoring is a requirement for being good at coding. Are you ready to talk refactoring? It's time for the interview. Christian Dr. Lambda Clausen, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm sorry this took so long. We sort of tripped over some things on my end. You are in the process of writing 5 lines of code for Manning Publications. Chapter 13 or 14, I think, is what's up on MEEP right now?
Chapter 9 just came out recently.
Okay, all right.
14 would be the whole book.
So it's really great to have you. And, 5 lines of code. What's the metaphor of 5 lines of code? Why that?
I've been working as a consultant, seeing a lot of code in industry and going around to a lot of different places. And what I found was that there wasn't a lot of refactoring done. The code quality was not quite where I wanted it. And I started thinking about why was that? Why were people not doing it? I mean, Martin Fowler's book Refactoring has been out for 20 years now. And I mean, it's right there. It's a great book. And I thought just everyone had read it and stuff. So in that line of thought, what I realized is it's probably because it's hard to get good at. Like, it's hard to be good at refactoring quickly. And people don't have the time to sit down and study and practice and do dojos and stuff as much as we'd like because we're busy. Software developers are always busy, it seems. And so I was like, okay, how can I make this easier? How can I make this quicker for them to pick up and be good at? So I came up with rules that are very easy to remember and very easy to apply. And they're quantifiable, so you can just sit down and check them. There is no judgment required, which means they're super easy to use. And the first one I came up with was 5 lines of code. And that sort of motivated the rest of the rules. And It's about method length.
Before we go much deeper, I've been poking around. I've been in the industry for a little while and a fan of refactoring. But what I find most, I don't know if it's intriguing or tragic, is that every time I bring the topic up, I end up with, if there are 10 people in the room, I get at least 11 or 12 different ideas about what it is. So from your perspective, what is refactoring?
So in my opinion, refactoring, and I think also following the official definition, is simply changing the code without changing the external behavior. And that means it could be for a number of reasons. Although most commonly, including in my book and also Martin Fowler's book, it is about making the structure better. It's about making the code more maintainable and more readable. And that's probably the most used version of refactoring. But I also consider optimizing code, for instance, to be refactoring.
How do you define maintainable? How would you actually know if something was maintainable?
Yeah, so there are a lot of elements for code to be maintainable. One of the ones I dig most into in the book is the fragility of the code. The tendency there where if you change something in one place, how likely is it that will affect somewhere completely different and unrelated in the code? Because that makes it very, very difficult to work inside of that. It makes it difficult to change anything and makes it difficult to just navigate the code and figure out what are the dependencies all over the place. And so by maintainable, I mean, it should be easy to just go in and change something without affecting a lot of other things. The changes should be as local as possible.
I can remember several months of my life, at least that's the way it felt like, several months of my life, deep in the bowels of a basement, trying to piece together code, or at least understand code well enough to actually change it while the person who wrote it was probably somewhere in Central America on PTO and wasn't answering their cell phone as this thing doesn't run. Is that why maintainability is important? And I'd like to almost revisit that we can do that now. I was intrigued by your ideas on comments and why you're a minimalist at best on comments. And those times I was really wishing somebody had written down what the heck they thought they were doing, because I didn't have a clue, regardless of how well I could read the code.
Yeah. So first, I found that it helps if I clarify that by comments, I talk about the comments inside of a method. I'm not talking about documentation and all that sort of stuff that's outside. So inside of the methods, I prefer having as few comments as possible. I take the same sort of approach that I do with most things in code. Does it help me make bugs, or does it help me not make bugs? And I mean, all the comments that make us not make any errors, they're great. They should stay forever. The problem is that comments tend to go out of date, or you don't quite get them maintained as well as the code. It changes, or something around it changes. It's not relevant. It's not doing that thing anymore, or it's not even interesting anymore, or it's way excessive with the comments. A lot of comments can just be made into method names. We're a lot better at maintaining the method names than we are the comments, I find. Like when someone sees a method name and they've been looking at the method being like, this is not what it does, they actually rename it. Whereas with the comment, it's very rare people look at the comment and say, I don't think this is what the code does, but it's a comment, so it doesn't matter, right? It's like, and that means the comments are not as useful as they can be. And in some cases, they can actually make us make more mistakes and more errors. And so I way prefer having method names explaining. I have 4 or 5 categories of comments in the book also. I describe how to deal with each of them.
Mm-hmm. When is refactoring important?
I think it's important all the time. I think we shouldn't deliver anything to our team's code base before we've made it, nice to work with, before we've made it ready for the team. Anything that should be maintained by the team should be nice, instead of if we deliver unrefactored code, we risk tripping the other people up in our team, and that's bad, and it kills team spirit too.
Understood. So I think that also handles why it's important. The big question, I think, when it comes to refactoring is, and you sort of alluded to it in your opening remarks, and that is, why don't people do it? It has been. It's like many things that in this industry, they've been around for a long time. In theory, it's simple enough. Why don't we spend the time and effort to actually do it?
Yeah, and my guess is that it's because it's not easy to be great at, and it invites a lot of discussion also in teams. Even if you have, I was on a project once where we had 3 tech leads, which in itself is a lot of cooks. But whenever we started discussing what was good code, how did we want this code base to evolve and stuff, we got into these very almost metaphysical questions of like, what is good code? How do we want it to feel? Like, what are these things? And it was very difficult to agree on anything. And if you have to sit down and have that discussion before you can even start this refactoring journey, then it's going to take a lot of time, and it's going to be filled with dread, right? Because discussing such things just isn't interesting for 5 hours every day.
No, but maybe once for 5 hours, and perhaps with food and drink the first time. But yeah, you're right. 5 times every day, 5 hours every day. So if it's that hard to come to consensus and to have everyone on the same page metaphysically, how do you get there? I mean, is that a magic wand that you need, or is it something else?
I'm hoping that just by providing a decent starting set of rules in my book, that people could start from there and then, diverge in whatever direction they want to, because it's an iterative process also, discovering what you want your code base to look like and feel like. And that's fine. If I provide the starting point, then at least you can start tomorrow and you can get some experience with it, and you can make the decisions on an informed basis instead of just based on feelings and touchy stuff.
Which is your favorite rule in the book?
My favorite rule?
Yeah.
I mean, the 5 lines of code gave names to the book, and it also motivated all of the rest of what's in the book. So I have a special fondness for that one. I do like it very much. It's given me so much in practice also. When I used to teach a lot of the new people we hired, and it was like, how do I get these guys started being better today? Like, how do I get them to ask the right questions, right? Because also another thing is, you learn when you need to learn. As a software developer, we're really creative people. And if we don't see the issues, we don't solve them, right? So if I say you have to never use more than 5 lines of code in your methods, then all of the new guys maybe they could go a day or two without hitting that limit. But then they were like, but Christian, now I have this if statement and it has all of these cases. I can't make it less than 5 lines. It's just not possible. So what do? And I'm like, I'm super glad you asked. Here is the next rule, right? Never use if with else. And, it sort of evolved like that. And they learned to think about the right problems or ask the good questions. I'd already created the urge to learn this now in their heads, which was great.
Okay, so interesting. Let's stay metaphysical just for a second. Code, is it intrinsically valuable?
No, I think code is a liability. As a lot of my peers, I think that it's a commitment to maintaining that code and to making sure it stays relevant. There is a update. The problem is we write code to model reality in some way. That's what we do, right? We needed to do something that can automate some part of our reality. The issue is that reality has a tendency to change around us and around our code. As people learn things or businesses change or customer segments change, everything changes all the time. And that means we need to maintain the code so that the model stays good enough to still be useful. And so everything that we've written down is static, and that means it's drag on the development process. Technical drag, I call it. We need to maintain it. We need to update it. We need to check it and read it, and we need to do all sorts of things with it. So code is super expensive to have. Functionality is what's valuable, right? It's the features that are actually used that are valuable.
Point taken. If we looked at code as a liability, where do you think that takes us in terms of thinking? So you're a brand new coder. Somebody has convinced you that code's a liability. Obviously, you have to have some, or you can't get to functionality. What's the natural outcome of that thought process going on in your head?
I think it's Kent Beck who said a long time ago, maximize the amount of work not done is sort of the natural conclusion to that, right? Mm-hmm. We want to make sure that what we do is actually valuable. So I like doing the thing that Dan North came up with, where he called it spike and stabilize, where you just treat the code as something that's going to be thrown away anyway. So you write the code so that it has the functionality and it just hangs together by a thread. You connect it up to the system, to the production system in some way, and then you just watch people use it or not use it. If they don't use it, then it's not valuable. Just get rid of it immediately, having spent the minimum amount of time on that. It's like an experimental way of developing software. And like, if people do use it, then go back and make it really nice before you integrate it into the main code base, right? Write the tests, do the refactoring, all of that stuff.
So I've seen that sort of activity in a true software development kind of scenario where we were building functionality before it ever went out to customers. Where I have not seen that approach used, I don't know if it will work or not work, is in a more common organizational IT department that's doing maintenance and enhancements and minor functional revisions, where they probably don't have different libraries or different environments that they can actually play with.
Okay, well, I mean, the feature toggling is this new amazing thing that I love talking about, and it's super simple because it's literally just putting an if into the code, and that can give you the same effect as having multiple environments, or you can test on certain people or whatever. You can build these systems quite simply, actually, that just gives you a lot of wiggle room to play around with real features and real users, and however you want to do this, right? You can give it to some of your stakeholders, or you can give it to your real users, or you can roll it out, you can make it dynamic, and you can do all of these things that mean you can test your functionality, how useful something is before you spend time on it. Of course, it also incurs a commitment to actually clean that up afterwards, right? Because an if not only adds code, it also adds complexity, because it's difficult to maintain, especially once they start nesting and multiplying and it gets crazy. So it does trade off actual complexity in the code, but with good discipline for deleting them and a good, being practiced in doing that sort of cycle, I think it's a huge strength.
How did writing the book change how you thought?
I've always liked writing, actually, and I've always liked teaching. So I've been taking all of the teaching gigs that I ever could, and I started writing my first book when I was not very old. I think I was 13 or something, and I wanted to write everything about web development, which, as it turns out, was an infeasible amount of work for a 13-year-old, and probably also for myself now. But I like writing things down, and I like explaining things. I like taking people on a journey to learn something and to see people actually use it in real life. The best thing I know is now when I log on to my messenger or something, and one of my friends says, "Hey, Christian, I used that thing that you wrote today." And I'm like, okay, did it work? Like, how was it? Do you agree? Like, does it make sense in your case? And in a lot of the case, in everything they've told me so far, it's been very valuable to them and to their teams. And that gives me a great feeling. So I think more now about teams and people than about the actual code. I'm more interested in what it does to the teamwork and the team spirit, because the team is what's delivering the software, right? The code is just, as I said, it's a liability, it's a side effect, it's something we need, but it's not what's good. What's good is how people feel about going to work. And, they feel when they can accomplish the things that they need to and move fast and implement awesome features, then they feel good. They're happy. That's most important to me.
That's fair. Who's the book for?
So it's written for a more junior audience. I mean, people who've already read Refactoring or Clean Code or the other books in those kind of areas will probably not gain much from my book. They might gain some a new way to teach it or to help other people grow, but mostly it is a primer in refactoring. It's intended to be sort of a prequel to those. You start there and then you can build up with, I think Martin Fowler has something along the lines of 70 refactorings in his book. And I feel like that's a lot for someone who's inexperienced to take in all at once. And so I figured if I start with, I don't know if I have 10 or 20 or something, but it's a lot more feasible, at least in my opinion. So starting with those and getting a deeper understanding for those that are probably the most common ones, and then building on top of that. So yeah, so it's a good first introduction to refactoring, I hope.
The Dr. Lambda. Is there a story there?
So I was hired at a company once, and the CTO at the place liked functional programming, and I also like functional programming a lot. And so he would send me these puzzles once in a while, actually quite often. He would send me a little, "Oh, look at this thing. Can you solve this thing with functional programming?" And it was anything from doing lists where you could append linked lists where you could append to the end in O of one time, right? Constant time. And that's a fun little challenge. And it was fairly clear that we had different angles on almost all of the challenges, which was pretty cool, because every time I saw one, I would send it back being like, "But can you find the other solution also?" Because there was another solution often. So we had great chemistry in that way. And he started calling me Dr. Lambda because I fixed all of the things with lambdas and functional programming.
Wow. Interesting. Christian, if you woke up tomorrow morning, somebody handed you your morning beverage of caffeine, whatever that is, a magic wand, and allowed you to have two wishes, and that affect refactoring, what would those two be and why?
I don't know. I don't know how I would use two wishes. I don't like big bangs in that way. I feel like it's a matter of gradual improvement, and mostly I just hope that we learn as a field and we get better at making software. And I feel like in some areas we have, and in some areas we're still teaching the same things that we have been teaching for 20 years. So maybe just that we get. I think I would like more seniors. The fact that we're growing so quickly means there are a lot of juniors to a few seniors right now. And that means it's a lot harder for the seniors to have enough time to teach all of the juniors, at least in what I've seen. Mm-hmm. The concentration is, the ratio is crazy right now.
Yeah, I've seen that also.
Being able to take it a little bit slower and actually get better and get really good at what we do. That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. Christian Clausen, Christian Dr. Lambda Clausen, author of 5 Lines of Code for Manning Publications. How can people continue the conversation?
Yeah, so I'm trying to be as available online as I can. So I'm writing a blog that posts a new blog post every 2 weeks. I also have a stream twice a week where people can come and actually talk to me in real time, ask me questions, and I can demonstrate different refactorings or code or whatever. I love when people come by and just say hi or just ask a question or something. I'm also on Twitter where people can listen to me. I tweet once in a while when I think of something interesting, and I'm also on GitHub. So there should be a lot. The book also has a live forum where people can go and tell me stuff about the book if there's a typo or if they liked it or if something could be better. So there are a lot of ways to reach out. Super. And I love it when people do that.
Okay, absolutely super. As you know, at the end here, I open up the platform for you to promote anything you like. So the podcast has been around for roughly 14 years at this point, probably another 14 years left in it. So selling your car on eBay, probably not the right answer, but the platform's open for anything that you'd like. Now, obviously, we want people to go out and buy the book, and we'll have links in the show notes for that. But what else would you like to promote?
I think I would just like to thank all the people who reach out and help me take the book from good to great. That goes for both my team at Manning and my reviewers and everybody who reaches out on any of those channels. I love interacting with people, and it really makes both my work more meaningful and the book a lot better. So thank you.
Super. Have a marvelous day, and thank you, Christian, Dr. Lambda Clausen, for spending time with the Software Process and Measurement Cast listeners.
You too, Tom. Thank you for having me.
In Reread Saturday News, cue the eerie sound effects from low-budget science fiction movies that signal time travel. After publishing our reread of Chapter 19 last week, Steve Tendon sent me a message, "Where's Chapter 18? I nearly responded right after Chapter 17, but a little voice told me to check. Lo and behold, I had not addressed full kitting as ongoing executive activity, otherwise known as Chapter 18. Today, we go back in time and review the first chapter in Part 6 of Tame Your Workflow by Daniel Doiron and Steve Tendon. By the way, use the link in the show notes, buy a copy. In the Software Process and Measurement Cast 621, we will feature our essay on why Agile coaches need a code of ethics. It's time for coaching to grow up and be a profession. We will also complete the 3-conversation arc on grateful leadership from Susan Parente. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?